Okay, everybody, you need to come in and sit down because we have a very important speaker coming up next, Bob Roth. It is my pleasure to not introduce Bob because we have something very special for you, and the introduction is coming right now. A good friend of mine who's going to be doing the introduction for Bob Roth. So calm down and watch.
Hi everybody, the Global Wellness Summit. We are so sorry that we can't meet with you. Trust me, we would love it, especially in Italy. I've been having a fantastic time. We're very excited about your next guest, who we are partly going to introduce, as well as with Tony DeLeede, who will be on stage in a second. And his name is Bob Roth.
Bob Roth taught our entire family how to meditate. He first came to us to teach our son Oscar. When both of our children were little, him and I would meditate, and the kids would literally sit in the same room with us and draw or just be still, and you could tell that they were picking up on that energy. So from a very young age, we introduced them to this concept, and then Bob came along and gave us all the tools to meditate as a family.
Deb and I have been meditating for 25 years, just after you were born.
Yes.
And it really was a game changer for both of us. We still meditate to this day. I'm sure we're preaching to the converted, but trust me, there is no better person. If you're not aware of what TM is, there's no better person to explain it or introduce it than Bob Roth.
And Bob has taken this all over the world. He's been working with people with PTSD. He goes out to work with abused women. He literally takes his message and his technology, his tools of how to meditate out into the world and shares it with everyone that needs it. And
so
let's face it, we all need it.
Enjoy. And hopefully maybe you can bring the GWS down to Sydney one time.
It's very interesting for me to be here with all of you at this time, because I am just sitting in the audience thinking back to 50 years ago, about now. I never would have imagined that I would be teaching Transcendental Meditation meditating for 50 years and teaching it for over 46. And I've been meditating 50 years. I started when I was 50. So you can, no, I started when I was 18. So I'm 68, I've been meditating for 50 years. And at that time, I was really wanting to do something to change the world. I was interested in social transformation. I had worked for Bobby Kennedy as a high school senior. I had seen Bobby Kennedy speak in San Francisco in June. Don't worry, I am going to get to meditation, but I'm giving you a little background here. I had seen Bobby Kennedy speak in June 1st, 1968 in San Francisco, and I wasn't a Republican or a Democrat. I just felt like, oh, we are going to change something with this man. And I felt part of something big. And then 4 days later, he was gone. So I went to Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley. I wasn't a druggie and I wasn't a crazy person. I went there because I wanted to become a United States Senator and be like Bobby Kennedy and change the world. And while I was there, it took me about a month to realize in Berkeley that politics was not the way I was going to heal the soul of the nation. Too divisive. And what was then is now everywhere. Then is now everywhere. And I thought, okay, my mother was an educator, and my father was a doctor, so health education. And I should write educational curriculum, and I should, with kindergartners, and give kids the tools to navigate in what was then, and become now even more, an impossibly disruptive, chaotic world. And along the way, despite my inherent skepticism, I'm my father's son. I like things science, and I like things down to earth, and I like things real. And when someone told me about meditation way back when, I said, whoa, I ain't into that stuff. But they told me about something called TM, Transcendental Meditation. It came from a sane person, and one of the rare ones there. And I heard about it, and I said, well, I don't believe in that. And my friend said, well, you know, you don't have to believe in gravity to drop a tennis ball. You don't have to believe in this meditation for it to work. So I thought, okay, an hour a day over 4 days, I'll learn it. If I don't like it, I'll quit. After my first day of instruction in TM, the first thought I had was not, oh, I would like to get enlightened, my first thought was, oh, this is what I want to teach to those inner city school kids. So that was 50 years ago. I now help head up a foundation called the David Lynch Foundation, and Rona and Jeffrey Abramson are back there somewhere, and they are founding board members and wonderful, wonderful human beings. And that foundation has now brought transcendental meditation for free to 1 million inner city school kids in the US and all over the world. We also work with veterans who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. 21 veterans in the United States commit suicide every single day. We work with women and children who are survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. And we also work with Goldman Sachs and all these top companies and wonderful people like Hugh and Deb Jackman. And when we do a program for Goldman Sachs, a wellness, creativity enhancing program, we charge them a little more money. We're a nonprofit organization, and they say, why are you charging the extra money? And I say, because that money is going to go teach veterans to learn to meditate for free. And they say, well, what if we don't want to pay that extra? Because I run the foundation, I say, well, then we're not teaching you. Because this is something like, and then they pay. This is something like wellness. And the work that Susie and Nancy and everybody with Global Wellness, it is deeply moving to me. And this moonshot, it's real. This is not fanciful thinking. 50 years ago, who would have thought that transcendental meditation would be taught in public schools all over the country and all over the world? Who would have thought? And so what you're doing here, the first time, I'm a number one. First time, what you're doing here is truly transformational. And I'm about to get to meditation. But don't think someone else is going to do it. You're at the cutting edge. You can do it. So let's shift now. What the heck is meditation? How many people here do some form of meditation? Right. Now, do you think 20 years ago, if I would have said how many people do some form of, people would have like, barely. I remember when I was a new teacher, I was 22 years old, TM teacher, and my friends' parents, my parents' friends would say, well, what's Bobby up? They call me Bobby. What's Bobby up to? Teaching meditation. What? Teaching meditation. Now it's changed. The problem is, meditation is everywhere, but nobody really knows exactly what it is. So in your community, in our community, I'm part of the wellness community, in our community, we have to do a better job of defining and explaining what meditation is. It's not just a generic, abstract sort of thing. We're much further along when it comes to science and understanding. So I'm going to use an analogy, then I'm going to talk science, then I'm going to show you a video of some of the work that we do, okay? When I talk about meditation, I like to use the analogy of you're on a little boat, and let's say you're in the middle of the Mediterranean. All of a sudden you get these giant you get these giant waves, big, huge waves, and you're on a little boat. And you could rightfully think that the whole sea is in upheaval, 20, 30-foot huge waves. Whole sea is in upheaval. But if you could do a cross-section out there, you'd realize while the sea, Mediterranean or the Atlantic may be turbulent on the surface, the depth of the Atlantic is well over a mile deep. And while the nature of the ocean, Atlantic, could be turbulent on the surface, the nature of the ocean at its depth is pretty darn silent. And that's the analogy I use for the mind, and that's the analogy I use for meditation. So the surface of our mind, I use the analogy of, wave. That's all of the thoughts. Millions of thoughts. I like to call it, some people call it the monkey mind. I like to call it the gotta mind. So Susie's got to do this and got to do that, and got to call him and got to call her, and got to make a list, got to find the list, got to make a new list, got to slow down, but I got to get going, and I got to get to sleep, but I got to get up. Anybody? Not? So it's natural. This is life. We live a life. We have a lot going on. It's a natural human desire. I don't care where you live, what your nationality is, what your religion. It's a natural human desire to think, I'd like to have some inner calm, some inner clarity, some inner focus, some inner silence, some inner connectedness, and the operative word there is inner. And the question is there such a thing as an inner? And if so, how do we get there? And the purpose of meditation throughout the ages has been to bring some degree of an inner, some degree of equanimity, some silence, and some power to the mind. They used to think 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, that all meditations were the same. It didn't really matter what you did. Just meditate. The great Jerry Boddicker showed a slide and talked today saying that in 1970, the first research came out on transcendental meditation, which showed the body gained a profound state of relaxation, changed the brainwave patterns, reduced high blood pressure, and that was the first breakthrough study published in Science and Scientific American. From that, there was a sort of, I like to say, a bit of a lazy, I don't want to say that to our scientific friends, but a bit of a lazy, that all meditations were the same. But about 15 years ago, brain research came out that showed, wait a minute, there are different types of meditation, and different types of meditation produced different effects in the brain. And why is that? Because different experiences change our brain in different ways. If you listen to classical music, it has a different impact on the brain than if you listen to techno. If you watch a chick flick, a romantic comedy, it's different than a David Lynch horror movie. Has a different effect on the brain. So what they decided to do is study a bunch of different people doing different types of meditation, and they found different outcomes, and this is what they came to realize. There are not just one type of meditation, and there are not innumerable types of meditation. There are three basic types of meditation. And I'm going to use the analogy of the ocean and give you the philosophy behind that. The first type is called focused attention. Focused attention. And that is a concentration form of meditation. That's your classic at the end of a yoga class. The idea there is, thoughts are the disruptor of calm. You want a calm mind, thoughts are the disruptor of calm. Stop thinking thoughts. I remember when I was a freshman in college and my girlfriend had me go to a yoga class, and at the end of the yoga class, the teacher said, "Okay, now clear your mind of thoughts." And I remember having the thought very clearly at that time, right. And then I will create peace in the Middle East. I have a lot of thoughts. But that approach is a legitimate approach, focused attention, vipassana meditation. I should say right here, this is not judgment. The meditations I'm talking about, legitimate approaches. And it's not a question of one better than the other, it's a question of outcomes. And as experts in the field of wellness, it's important that you know that it's not either or, it's a yes and for different reasons. So, in a focused attention, you try and clear your mind of thoughts. What that does is it creates something called gamma brain waves. Gamma brain waves are 20 to 50 cycles per second, very fast, shows you're working hard. If you could hook that up with your child and the child says, "I'm studying," well, I don't see gamma brain waves. It's a little intrusive. But gamma brain waves, focused. Second type of meditation, open monitoring. Open monitoring includes a lot of mindfulness techniques. How many people here practice or teach mindfulness? So mindfulness meditation, you've heard that term though. Mindfulness meditation has a different approach, a different perspective in our analogy. It says that thoughts are not the disruptor of calm, but the content of thoughts can be the disruptor of calm. If you have a thought about a guy named Joe, and you don't know anybody named Joe, then you have a thought about Joe and But if Joe done you wrong 2 days ago or 20 years ago, and Joe comes up, or, but Joe. So what mindfulness rightfully teaches us to maintain equanimity in the moment is how to emotionally disengage from content, to be present, to be here, not to be lost in the past or the future, because real happiness, real equanimity can only happen here. So mindfulness has many, many techniques. There's mindful walking, mindful talking, mindful eating. Google has mindful emailing. What you do on that one, because they got a lot of trouble there, is no one is allowed to respond to an email at Google without taking a few breaths, counting to 10, and then they can respond. But the idea is to disengage. Now there's not just mind, there's also body scans. Closing your eyes and being aware of how your body is feeling at a particular time. Breathing. Now this is just like focused attention. This is cognitive processes. Cognitive processes means thinking, feeling, emotions. It's somehow adjusting, adapting to the waves. How many waves I have, what I'm thinking about, how I'm thinking, my attitude towards thinking, it's this. Open monitoring creates something called theta brain waves. That's 4 to 8 cycles per second. Also, because you close your eyes, there's alpha 2, which is the input from that hits the occipital lobe site. So there's a calming in the occipital lobe, alpha 2, 10 to 12 cycles per second. Mindfulness has been found to be very, very effective, as Dr. Boddicker said. It's used for veterans to help them deal with pain. It changes attitude. There's a third type, and that's called self-transcending, or transcendental meditation, or TM. And in this approach, we hypothesize something. We hypothesize that there's a vertical dimension to the mind, that we're not just thoughts, that there's a vertical dimension to the mind, and we hypothesize that, like the ocean has activity on the surface and silence at its depth, the mind is the same. It's a hypothesis, don't have to believe it. Surface of the mind is the active thinking mind. Deep within every human being, it's not something you have to believe in or visual, it's just there, we've lost access, is a transcendent level of the mind, is a quiet, calm, peaceful, unbounded level of the mind, my own settled self. And transcendental meditation gives effortless access to that. Let's pause for a minute, and let's just be a skeptic. Here's some guy up here who worked for Bobby Kennedy in 1968, talking about a transcendent, source, quiet, settled level of the mind, and it's peaceful, and says who? Fair question. Fair question. I'm standing here sort of saying that this is a health intervention, a medical intervention that should be treated as so many of the other tools that you're talking about. So says who? How do we know that's even happening? That it's not just suggestion. Placebo. Well, you know better than I. The mind-body connection. If I'm anxious about something in my mind, my body is tense. If I'm sleepy in my body and my partner wants to tell me a story, say something, and I'd love to listen, but fall asleep. If in fact it's true that during this process of transcending just means settling down. Process of transcending, settling down. If that's something significant is happening to health, it must show up in your limbic system, your nervous system, your digestive system, your cardiovascular system, your respiratory, across the board, everywhere. And that's exactly what happens. There's now been 400 scientific research studies published in peer-reviewed journals, starting back in 1970. And the most recent one is going to be coming out in the next week or two in Lancet Psychiatry, that showed veterans with serious post-traumatic stress disorder who learned transcendental meditation at a VA hospital in California, that the reduction in symptoms of serious trauma was greater than the standard treatment that the VA has been using for years called prolonged exposure. Why? Because during the meditation, during TM, the body gains a state of rest and relaxation, a unique state, in many regards deeper than the deepest part of deep sleep. But it's not a sleep state. It comes with a unique state of inner wakefulness. They call it a state of restful alertness. What does that mean? There's an increase in alpha 1, 8 to 10 cycles per second, completely different than sleep, dreaming, anything else. 8 to 10 cycles per second. Alpha 1 is a state of profound inner calm and yet awake inside. Along with that, you know cortisol levels. Cortisol is a horrible stress hormone, adrenal burnout, one of the worst things of our age, too much cortisol. Good night's sleep reduces cortisol. It's a stress and anxiety hormone, reduces cortisol levels a bit. During 20 minutes of TM, published research shows drops cortisol levels 30 to 40%. No one's ever seen that before. And I should say that this has a spillover effect. It's not just like, oh, I'm cool, now I'm stressed. There's a spillover effect. Those cortisol levels stay down. The National Institutes of Health have given $26 million to study the effects of this meditation on high blood pressure, stroke, heart disease, atherosclerosis, and shown that it is as effective, if not more effective, for reducing high blood pressure than antihypertensive medications with no side effects. And and staying down. The last thing I'll talk about, and then I really want to show this video, and then we'll talk a little bit more. And I am going to be so on time, Susie, just so on time. No music for me, although I do like the music. And I like Jerry dancing. It was very good. The creative process. You know, they used to think, oh, you're a right brain person. Remember that? You're a right brain person. Oh, you're a creative, artistic type. Oh, you're a left brain person. You're a numbers cruncher. You remember that sort of stuff? Well, it turns out it's not true. It's not true. Creativity is not in regions of the brain. Creativity is found in networks within the brain. And the three key networks within the brain for the creative process is the attention network, which is your prefrontal cortex, the CEO of the brain, which governs judgment, planning, decision-making, focus, sense of self. That's the attention network. And then there's another network in the brain. This is your task positive. This is where you're working hard. Then the scientists wondered, well, what happens when you're not working hard? What does the brain sort of default to when we're not focused? And they came up with the very creative term, the default mode network. So what does it default to? The default mode network. Now the default mode network was considered sort of the wandering mind. But now, recently what they found is the default mode network, they're also calling it the imagination network. That's where the good ideas come from. You know, the thing of you have a partner or yourself and you're focused and you're working and you're trying to figure something out and you're writing, or your child is getting all worked up and you say, you got to take a break. You know, let's go for a walk, right? Just turn it off, go for a walk, take a weekend off. Why? Because the attention network and the default mode network, the imagination network, are at odds with each other. There's another thing called the salience network, which is the part of the brain that turns one on and the other off. That's the part of the brain when you're in a business and you sit around. I'm sure it happened with global wellness when they said, okay, let's just brainstorm here for a moment. Let's just brainstorm. It's just no editing, no, critics, just blue sky. Okay, you blue sky, and then you got to put pen to paper. Stress does what? Stress shuts down, takes the prefrontal cortex offline. Stress suppresses the imagination network. Also, meditation techniques that involve concentration or control of the mind also shut down the default mode or imagination network. A research study, and I don't have it right in front of me, but a research study, and you can look up imagination network, creativity, and you'll see, found that the most creative people in the world, it's not one is on and the other is off. Now I'm focused, now I'm brainstorming. Now I'm focused, now I'm brainstorming. The most creative people in the world, the attention network and the imagination network function simultaneously in harmony with each other. That's the ability to be in the midst, focus, but also pivot. Most creative people have that. And when a person practices transcendental meditation, number one, it calms the amygdala, which is your reactivity center. It strengthens the network here, of the attention network. Is this too abstract? Okay, well, I'm almost done. And then it also wakes up the creativity network. And that's why kids who meditate in school, and we're in public, private, and charter schools all over the country and all over the world, they do better on their test scores. Why? Not because I'm meditating and Om and all that. It's relaxing, but it wakes up the brain, the creative centers in the brain. I would like to now show, I'm giving you a heads up here, to show the video of work that we're doing all over the world. And in the US, in schools, they start and end each, it's called quiet time, the schools, because the problem of stress in schools is the number 2 cause of death among teenagers in America, suicide. And among girls 13 to 16, fastest growing rate. Children are being mauled by stress. We have to give them the tools to handle the stress. So in conclusion, I'll show the video. What you're doing here, I say this again, global wellness should be at the forefront of understanding what meditation is about. We exercise to stay healthy from the neck down, so much from the neck down. Diet, exercise. It's a little 3-pound thingy here, runs the show. Look at effective meditation TM as a way to strengthen the connections and communication within the brain. This is a very moving video. As soon as it's done, I'll say thank you very much.
This is a rough neighborhood, and it becomes a struggle for a lot of the kids. It becomes a struggle.
A lot of kids in my environment feel like they probably won't make it to their 18th birthday.
When they come from traumatized neighborhoods, a lot of times they bring those stresses here.
When I'm with my friends, I always make sure we're looking around because you never know, things happen.
They walk in the door feeling like they don't have a shot.
Every day I would get a call that there is a fight at the corner of the street, that there is a stabbing.
O índice de drogas aqui é muito grande.
If we're not able to find solutions, these children may be lost.
Quando é 8h15, bate o sinal e aí todos eles param o que estão fazendo e meditam.
A través de la meditación empezamos a ver que se están alejando de las drogas.
Hemos combatido la cuestión de las peleas, las agresiones.
पढ़ाई में भी मदद मिल रही है, जैसे आसपास में मन भटक जाता था अब वो भी नहीं हो रहा है और अंदर के बहुत सारे रोग, बीमारियां, वो सब भी अब दूर हैं।
when our girls come in and they are just a wreck, and then they do quiet time, it's like it just smooths that out. And they walk out of the room feeling normal, feeling centered. And that's huge.
If we can get that change within each one of us, the change from within, we will change the school and we will in turn change the community.
We hold up our share. Let's all work together. We really can change. You're at the forefront. It's an honor for me to be here. I was so honored when Susie invited me to come. This is an extraordinary woman, Nancy too. So thank you very, very much for having me.